My name is Clemens Gütter. I am from Pathlock located in Germany. I'm product manager for vulnerability management, code scanning, and transport control, and everything around this area is in my responsibility. As Stephanie already mentioned, if you have any questions, please type them in and we will answer them at the end. Or you can also get in touch with us later if you want more deep dive, whatever. A slide regarding Pathlock itself. Pathlock is a group built out of several brands which are leader in their field, and we are placed all over the world, so we can give you also local or at least in your time zone contacts, depending on where you are located at. Yeah, what is today's session about? Today's session is about code scanning, but code scanning is also a part of cybersecurity. And so I want to start giving you an introduction into what is cybersecurity at all, and where do we find code scanning within this whole picture. As next step, I want to introduce a common state, how cybersecurity driven in companies. What is the state we see when we are get in touch with companies the first time, etc. After this, I want to discuss the question why you should use automated code scanning. The fourth point is what's Pathlock's solution and what is Pathlock's point of view regarding code scanning, and I will close with some key takeaways. But let's start with cybersecurity as an overview. There is some onion layers of protection. It's well known, and together it builds the cybersecurity defense. In the very middle, you'll find the RBAC, the role-based access control. This is the first line, or this is the major line where you should start with your cybersecurity. Only give roles to users they need, whatever they need. Give only users to people they need for their work, and so on. The next line, the ABAC, is based on attributes. For example, if you are located in US, you are allowed to see some detailed customer information. If you are not located in US, even if you have the roles, you are not allowed to see something like this. The next line of defense is the vulnerability detection. Everything about vulnerability management, detecting unsecure configurations, and as we are here out of today, the code scanning, detecting code vulnerabilities. Everything in this direction is part of the vulnerability detection. And the very last line of defense is the threat detection. This means real-time analysis, behavior analysis of the system, and what happens, and if there's some suspicious behavior, then make an alert. All these topics are part of the Pathlock suite, but today's topic is focusing more on vulnerability detection, or especially in the code scanning part. So let me dive in and common state of cybersecurity. I also have some KPIs here around, but let's start. Regarding the question, is the platform secure? 57% are not able to quickly identify vulnerabilities at application level, for example. And also 54% are not able to monitor privileged access. Yes, it's a problem, but why it is like this? First of all, systems are often managed by third parties, by other people you are not in contact, so you don't have the full picture. You often or sometimes, depends, have some periodic audits and only ad hoc patching. So if there is something some zero-day exploit, for example, happens. No one knows who is responsible, what to do, and so on. And this means it's slow, reaction time is high, and so on. But the next question, is the code secure? Regarding code reviews, most companies rely on manual code reviews. To make manual code reviews, you need top engineers, and they have to spend time on reviews and training others. Additionally, there is normally just limited documentation about findings, etc. And you always have to ask the senior experts which can give information. And the last point I want to mention here is often code scanning is only limited to pre-production systems. Most likely the development system. Sometimes it's also on the QA systems, for example, but often after the development process is finished, no one is interested in code scannings anymore. And just another number, 79% of developers do not build any security features into app development. And what is here the problem? Normally, security features are not part of the tool of the application itself. It's just based on some regulations, some compliance rules, and it's just an additional thing you have to add without getting any feature itself. And so it's often extra work for developers, and it's often just forgotten. The last point I want to mention here is tools for cybersecurity, and especially automated technologies. In many companies, cybersecurity is driven by security experts. They know everything about systems, they know every potential door, whatever, but they have years of experience. And if you lose one of them, you have a big, big problem. And a lot of work is just manual work, driven by some Excel sheets, whatever, and not really tool supported. Okay, Excel, but no professional tool for cybersecurity. And why it is like this? Often there's a lack of knowledge what these tools are capable of. Sometimes it's the money, but there are a lot of reasons. And as an actual SAP Insider report, I find two numbers. Around 38% of the participants have implemented or will implement within the next 24 months a vulnerability solution, and 32% some custom code vulnerability tool. And here you see numbers are low, and this can be a problem. But let's continue. Why it is often like this? Maybe you heard of it. There is a principle. It's called nothing will happen. And a lot of companies just follow this principle. Nothing happened yesterday, years before, so nothing will happen tomorrow. And this leads into a minimal security measures. Why you don't need effort into security measures if you think at least that nothing will happen. You rely on luck. If something happens, then you have the problem that you can only react and you have no proactive measurements. And this will lead into more costs. This will lead into production downtimes in the worst case, or even worse. There's also often an underestimation of threats and a false sense of security. And all this together leads into a huge attack surface. And the problem is, especially since Corona pandemic, attacks increased. The number of attacks increased largely. If you was safe the last years, it's most likely that you not will be safe in future. Some examples be detected at our customers before they used code security tools yet, now in this context. For example, we find some hidden sub-all. There is a function model where you can assign in sub-all to the authorization buffer, but if you are deep dive into the user via SU01, you will not find any sub-all. And so it's not detected, but as long as this buffer is not restarted, the user will have sub-all. We find some user password hash manipulations, especially that you transport an user password hash and change it afterwards back. So for example, it could be used over weekend, for example. Someone is logging out on Friday. He thinks everything is fine. Someone is just changing this password hash over the weekend and change it back on Monday. So the person does not know something happened, but within the weekend, the user was captured. There are more things. What is also especially exploitable is the last point, the modification of the substandard reports. So you can just edit any coding in productive environment without any restrictions. You don't need developer key on all older systems. You don't need the system modifiable and so on. You can just change things. And all this we found at customers, and they were surprised of it. Let's call it like this. But what did they have in common? They had no automated code scanning. And so I will focus next with why do we need automated code scanning? I just identified, or I want to discuss 5 points here. And the first point is the early detection of vulnerabilities. If you have an automated code scanning, you can just run it while the developers are developing. So it's easy to find for them. It's easy to understand that they have to change something, and they don't need to wait, for example, till the transport should start and someone else should review, some expert, or even if no one reviews. The second point, also very important, is it's always consistent and standardized. This means you will always have the same result if you scan the same object. And if you have multiple people looking on something, multiple developers, for example, one developer thinks, it's not perfect, but it will not be a threat. And the next one is really curious about things and thinks everything is a threat. And so you have not a standardized, consistent result. The scalability, again, if you have 1-2 experts manual with manual code reviews, you are not scalable. I think this is directly understandable and out of the box. If a machine is code scanning, it's scalable. A machine is not a human, and even if you're, maybe you didn't sleep well yesterday, you make you are tired, and so you oversee something. This happens. Making errors is human, and so again, it's important that you have some automated things. And last but not least, it's cost efficient. You have to pay it for once, but if you implement it, everything, you have an automated way to do so, and you don't need to train people again to make code reviews and so on. You don't need security experts which also understand ABAP, and so you can prevent major security incidents, which might lead into business impacts, and all business impacts might be way more expensive than a tool solution. So for why we should have an automated tool. But next, what are the challenges of such a tool? Or challenges first of code scanning at all. First of all, SAP applications, other than just minor Java apps or web apps or whatever, are very complex. Developments often contain thousands, 10,000 lines of code. This is made, especially human cannot understand everything, cannot oversee everything, but it's also a challenge for an SAP code scan. What you also need is capabilities for customization. And because especially custom code can introduce really unique vulnerabilities, which are only valid for your company, for your use case. For example, you have a custom developed paying tool, which makes the employee payments. For example, no standard tool can oversee it. So you need capabilities to make customizations. All automated tools will have false positives and negatives because it's just a pattern-based way you will have something like this. And what needs this solution? It's really important that you can mitigate and fine-tune the options. Fine-tuning the options because, for example, your use case is a little bit different to the pattern which is standard, and mitigate if you have a finding and you say it's just false positive, you need an option to mitigate this. So it's not any longer marked as a finding. Again, you need skilled resources. If the tool is not managing it for you, which understands everything. If you have a finding, for example, you need someone who understands what is to do or what is the need to fix it, what is the solution and how you can handle it. And this is not always easy to find someone who can handle this. And the last point I want to mention here is data protection. It's important that no data should leave the system, neither source code nor any kind of other data, because everything which is leaving your system is a potential risk for your data. So what is our solution providing? I directly want to map it into these 5 points again. And first, for the complexity of subsystems, Pathlock decided to use as a code scan the foundation, the ABAP test cockpit. I'm sure most of you know the ABAP test cockpit is the standard functionality from SAP, and it has years of experience with this tool, and I think every developer knows it, or like every developer. So it's easy to start with it and so on. And so we can leverage out of it. But why we need to extend the ABAP test cockpit, I think most of you also know the ABAP test cockpit has a good functionality in the area of performance, syntax checks, and so on, but it really lacks on security. And what is Pathlock doing? We just extend the content with our own content in all the fields of security. What is also reducing or an advantage of our code scan solution is that we have a full compatibility with other functionalities such as transport control. You can include transport control and code scanning, and you can integrate vulnerability assessments and code scanning. This I will also show later. For the customization part, you have a scan pattern editor. You can freely add your own patterns, or you can also adapt patterns. You can mitigate them, you can customize them, as I said before. You don't need very skilled resources, especially for the code scanning, because the ATC, all ABAP developers are familiar with, and you don't need to train them how it's, the work done with the ATC. It's integrated into the SAP system very deep, and the findings are explained and detailed solutions are provided. And since the ATC is directly executed in the system, your data, your code is never leaving your system, and you are safe regarding this data protection. What I want to focus next is the view on code scanning. Often code scanning is only seen as a part of the DevOps, of the development team, but there's more. There are, from our point of view, two perspectives on code assessment. The first is the development team, is the DevOps operations, but on the other hand, on the left side, we have the security team. And let me start with the security team. The security team has as a goal that they can identify, monitor, and eliminate vulnerabilities at all. It's not only custom code, sure, but custom code is one of the potential vulnerabilities, of the potential threats. The scope for the security team, at least for the complete team, is the complete business landscape. It's not only one system, especially it's not a development system. It's most likely the whole production landscape, especially if you have a huge landscape, you might have some mission critical systems, and it's more focused on this area. When do you want to use a code scan tool? Most likely cyclical monitoring, and maybe also if a change is transported into the in the production landscape, that you can have results before a transport is imported. Some companies I was working before had just rely on the developers. What they said to them before, we had to fulfill a questionnaire, for example, and just insert, are there some findings? Yes, no, and if yes, whatever. Give a short explanation, but no one checked it. And what is the requirement at the end? You need a summary and an overview of all code vulnerabilities. You need some prioritizations, very important. You need a dashboard for the reporting, and you need to analyze the trend. In which direction are the findings going? It's become more, less, whatever. The development team on their side has other goals. They are more solution-oriented. It's not important that you have the whole application. They have one task currently, and they want to follow just all compliance requirements, because otherwise they will get trouble. They have a problem to transport something in this direction. What is the scope? Development team is only interested into their development system, most likely, and they are more focused on single applications, not on the big picture. What is the moment of use? When does they want to use it? Directly when they are developing, or at least at the end when the transport is exported. And what are their risk requirements? It must be close to the system. It must be integrated in the development environment. If there's some developer in our round here, it must be work, for example, with Eclipse, with Visual Studio Code, but also with the SAP GUI development IDEs. And it must be performant, easy to use. And the last point, especially in my time as developer back the years, it shouldn't be a harassment. Sometimes code scanning solutions just are Yes, it's the developer thinks it's an trouble to have some. It's annoying because they have a lot of annoying findings, and it's not really understandable why you have these findings and so on. And it's also important that you have not the feeling that you are getting harassed. Yeah, with this done, I want to jump next in my demonstration to show you how it's looking from the both perspectives. Development team first, and second, I want to focus on the security team. For the development team demo, I want to show you a short comparison between the standard ATC result, where you will not find any security issues, and on the other hand, if you use our enhanced scope, that you can find them. And for the security team, I just want to deep dive, at least shortly, into one of these findings and give you an overview how the big picture deep dive for the security team is looking. Don't want to talk anymore. I want to show you things. I have here a report. It's just a really easy report for you who understand ABAP. They might see already, especially two very critical parts, but I will also show it for everyone. We have here in line 25, this call function BAPI user create. This is creating a new user. You can directly use this function module and create new users. And the second problem is this line 36, where you have the BAPI user profile assign, because the lines above I assign them sub all sub new. And as soon as this report is executed, you will have a user on the executed client with sub all sub new. And especially if this is part of the of a transport, and you add it as an XPRA, as a self-executing program, then you will have all authorizations on client 000 of the system, which means you have like all authorizations, most likely. But let me show what is the result of the default variant from ABAP Test Cockpit. The ABAP Test Cockpit, as I said, is really close integrated into the system. I can change here the variant and just go to the default variant and show you what will be the result. We have only some extended program checks. The first one is showing that I use a wrong type. And the second one is that I don't use a text element, I just have a hard-coded text, but both are not critical and you can just ignore them from security perspective. It's just not a good coding way. But if I now switch to the Pathlock code checks variant, then we will have another result. We will have a hard-coded password. This was because I had to enter also a password for this user. So it's more a coexistence, not really the issue of this report, but the next two, we have a user create and role assignment. And these two are really, or the three actually, are prior one problems you really need to focus on. But as I said, if you just use the standard default variant from ATC, you wouldn't have catched the problems here. So far to the development perspective. Now I also want to focus on the security team perspective. And here I want to deep dive a little bit into vulnerability assessment dashboard from Pathlock, only with the code security part. Everything else you can follow from the last webinar, and there will be more webinars in future regarding vulnerability management itself. But Pathlock uses some audit cycles, and this audit cycles is based on a rule set. And one rule set is focusing on code security. Oh, I lost my connection.
We can still hear you.
Yeah, no, I just lost the connection of the SAP system, not of the at all. I just was inactive too long. Yeah. Let me show you here the results. Just to mention, it's just a demo landscape, and so it's not really real data you see. It's real measured data, but not a lot is changing over the time. But I just started a second check here to have a little bit more data and to have a trend, for example. You see here we have an increasing trend of checks. It's also increasing the criticality. You have a lot of information. For example, you can have the concrete data, but I will show you in another view again. And you also have a run overview. The first one, for example, had 15 and 26 findings, critical high. And the last one I executed today before the webinar had like doubled the findings. And here you have a short trend. We also have other trends, but just to have it on one view. And now I want to just drill into one of these findings. We have here a critical finding. It's called generic table name called in red SQL statement. And when I now want to find out what happened here exactly, what happened here? Need to refresh once. I think it's based on the problems that I was lost my connection. So we have here a one-pager which gives you an overview about this issue. It's high is the exploitability score, which is given from Pathlock. You have a short business problem and technical solution, for example. You see the number of findings are increasing, and in another system you have this, and it's not resolved in 77 days, for example, in this case. And if you want to have more information about the whole topic, you have a technical solution, you have an example within it, you have references where you can find more regarding this topic, or you can also analyze this topic. It's open for 77 days. Yeah, and you have how many assets, for example, have the same issue. It's on 2 assets, in which audits it's checked, and so on. So you have a full picture regarding this issue, regarding the measurement of the problems, and you can have, as a security team, the best view on code vulnerabilities as well. And the good thing here is it's not only focusing on one system, it's focused on the whole threat landscape, the whole business landscape, and you can have one scan on all systems cyclical. So let me go back, since time is running, to my slide deck. It's just one slide left, at least from my side. The key takeaways. At the start, we discussed that you shouldn't follow the hope nothing will happen principle and utilize of automated tools for optimal security. Afterwards, we detected that you should use a tool to scan your ABAP code for critical statements, but also for customer-specific search pattern, because every threat, every code vulnerability scenario is different. The third point, especially in Pathlock, it's not only code scanning, but you can also leverage out of other functions like transport control and vulnerability assessment. It's important to understand that code assessment is a critical component, not only of the development process, not only the DevOps part for development team, but it's also a critical component of vulnerability management. What is also important, out of the box security baselines, which you can execute automated, just in cyclical things, but also ad hoc. I think I give you at least an impression of what Pathlock offers here and what we think about code scanning. Thank you for your attention, and I want to give it back to Stephanie to moderate the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Clemens. Again, if you do have any questions, we encourage you now to put them in the questions box and we will be happy to answer those. Okay, our first question is, how long does a typical implementation take?
Yeah, good question. There are two things we need to take a look on. There's one way you want to have the full suite of the whole functionality. Then we are talking about 4 to 8 hours for a landscape out of 3 systems. Or if you just focus on one particular code scan or only on the code scanning solution, it will take like an hour, half an hour, and then it's ready to run.
We have a question. How many rules checks have you developed?
Yeah, currently we have around 90 checks which are focusing only on security.
And they clarified in the extended version.
Sorry, I didn't get the point.
So the question was, how many rules checks have you developed? And they clarified in the extended version.
I don't get the second point with the clarified of the extended version. Sorry.
Not including
What
standard. Not including.
Okay. Yeah, this is 90 rules only focusing on the security, as I said, and none of them are covered by the standard baseline from SAP.
Okay, great.
But you can also leverage of all the SAP checks additionally.
Okay, great. And then my next question is, why an SAP ATC enhancement?
Also good question. We decided to use an ATC enhancement because it's easy to use for everyone. Like I said before, developers know about the ATC, they are familiar with it, they know their advantages, but also their disadvantages. And it's in productive use for many years now. And SAP always developed it a little bit more and more. But there was a huge gap. And we decided that the focus should be on the security part, especially with the cyclical scans, audit scans, and so on. And we can directly use the framework. And so it's also easy to understand, easy to run. You don't need trainings for your developers.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Clemens. I think that's all the questions we have for today. So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. And if you do have any more questions, you can reach out to us at info@pathlock.com and we'd be happy to answer any of those. And with that, I'll let you go and we hope to see you next time.